Welcome to the Successful Living Podcast. I am your host, Dinette Rivera. And I want to share something that I talked about yesterday in a workshop that I taught for students at a university in Mexico City. And the title of the program was Your Relationship with Money and the Impact on Business. And what I want to talk about today is this idea that we need to really reflect on our relationship with money. And the reason we need to do it is because it impacts everything in our lives. It really does. Think about the many decisions you make every day when you don't stop to think about how it might affect your budget. It can be your personal budget. It can be your business. You find yourself needing a piece of equipment, a new laptop, some new software, whatever it may be, and you know you need it, and you go out and you buy it. And perhaps it's a pretty large investment, but only days later or towards the end of the month, you discover that this particular piece of equipment could have waited. Instead of investing that money now, it may cause a problem with the funds that are available for other things. And this happens in our personal lives as well. And here's the problem. We don't stop to think about the fact that everyone around us, from the moment we are born, we start receiving information. And that information comes from the ideas that the people have that surround us every day. In the beginning, it's the people that are raising us, our parents, relatives, whoever it may be. We start to go out into the world, we go to school, and we get more ideas from more people. But when you think about ideas really come from our beliefs, and our beliefs generate the ideas that we have about how we handle things. And so it's important to note that the one thing that we don't do is get to know what our beliefs are. Where do they come from? Are they serving us, or are they not serving us? In other words, you have goals, and those beliefs that you have, especially around money, can cause a problem with you reaching your goals. I'll give you a perfect example of something that happened to me recently. For years, I had been setting a particular goal for my company, a pretty large goal, a stretch. And for years, I had gotten close, and then something happened and I didn't get there. But I never got so close that I could feel it, and I could, as we say, I could taste it, all the whole experience. And so for several years, including 2020, when we experienced the whole lockdown with COVID and all of that, I had the same goal. It was a goal of 6 figures that I wanted to take my business to. And I knew that I had the tools, the business knowledge. I had everything I needed to make that happen. It didn't happen in 2020. 2021, we found ourselves pretty much impacted by COVID still. And so I came into 2022, and I finally sat down and said to myself, this is it. In the next year, because I started thinking about this just a few months ago, and we're at the end of September. And so I started thinking about this goal again. And I sat down and I really focused on it, and I really thought about it. And I thought about the products and services that were going to help me get my company to this 6-figure goal. But more importantly, why do I want to get there? I want to get there because I'm tired of hearing statistics that say that less than 3% of women that own businesses ever reach even the first $1 million. And then you hear a statistic that Hispanics, less than 3% of Hispanics ever reach the first $1 million. And that bothered me. And I thought, well, why is it? And I started trying to understand the many, many reasons why that happens. And if you followed me or if you've heard of my work, you know that I have spent the last almost 2 decades trying to understand what it takes to help someone become successful. And while I found several reasons, and I talk about it in the book that I did take advantage of COVID to write and then publish, which is the Successful Living Action Plan, Your Path to Prosperity. But I started thinking further about this, especially when I think about financial capability, which is one of the pillars that I talk about in my book. And what happens is that we rarely stop to think about our beliefs in general. On every level, what do you believe should happen in a relationship? What do you believe you should be doing when it comes to your profession? How do you behave in public? Do you care what people think about you or not? Do you think that loving someone is not worth it, that it takes too much energy? Or do you feel like you give your love unconditionally? All of these are beliefs and come from our belief systems. And so where do those belief systems come from? They come from everywhere, everyone that you've ever dealt with. And think about this global community and the ability that we have to connect online in many different ways with many different tools, whether it's your cell phone, your computer, who knows how many other ways. And so what happens is you now are listening to things, watching videos, and taking in information. And at some point, you decide whether or not you believe it or you don't believe it. And if you believe it, it becomes part of your belief system. And if you don't believe it, it still becomes part of your belief system because you disagree. So whether you agree or disagree, it's part of your belief system. And that is the real problem with money, is that there's a relationship there that we create with money, and it's based on our belief system. If we believe that money can empower us and help us to reach our goals, we achieve great things. But if we start thinking that money is at the root of all evil, that money is bad, that it makes people do bad things, people kill each other because of money, and on and on and on, regardless of the goals that you set for yourself, especially financial goals, you're going to have problems because those belief systems that are sitting in your subconscious mind, and that whenever you try to achieve something financially, they're there. And they're not, it's not obvious to us that they're there. They're there because you set a goal and suddenly you start doubting it. You don't believe it's possible. And that's what I want to talk about when I think about my goal. When I started thinking about this goal this time, and I wrote it down and I gave it substance, I thought about how I would get there. I thought about the timelines. I did the numbers, all of that. And I set this goal. And things started to happen rapidly. Suddenly I have people contacting me that I hadn't heard in years, that want to work with me. They want my coaching. They want some business consulting, all the different things that I do, financial coaching. But it feels like magic, the way things started to change. But here's what I discovered. I discovered that the real reason why this time it's different for me with this goal is because this time I believe it. I truly believe that I am going to get to this goal. I know I am, because I have everything I need to do it. And I've had these things for years. But in the past, when I set that goal, even if I wrote it down and did most of the structure that you do when you're trying to create a really good goal for yourself that you can measure and hold yourself accountable, in the past, I can look back and I know that I didn't believe it. I didn't believe that it would ever happen for me. And I didn't believe it because of the many things over the years that people have said to me that I took in and stored them in my mind and gave it emotion and started to accept these things that people said to me as true. So when I think about the statistics that I mentioned before, about the 3% or less of businesses that ever reach 1 million, and I found myself being in two areas of that. I'm a woman, and it says that less than 3% of women. I'm Hispanic, so it says that less than 3% of Hispanics. But do you know that eventually, as I looked at that statistic and I looked at some other numbers that I found in recent research, that the reality is that in general, 3% is a number that's not just for women or Hispanics. It's really a small number of people that really get to 1 million. And so for me, it was this moment of, wait a minute. So the reality is that it's difficult for people to reach 3%, to exceed that 3%. In other words, getting to $1 million is not the easiest thing. But being a researcher and being someone that has more than 30 years experience now, it's been longer, right? So more than 30 years of experience in taking companies and doubling and tripling their income, sometimes in 3, 4, 6 months, and all that experience that I have, and then 14 years of being in business for myself. And believe me, it's up and down, up and down. For entrepreneurs, there's a lot of that. But the trick is you never give up. So the difference this time for me was that when I looked at the statistic and I understood that it's not just women and Latinos, it helped, it did something for me. It changed how I saw those goals of building your business and getting it to that moment where you break through that first $1 million. And something about seeing that statistic changed how I saw it being possible for me. And mainly because I know that everything is a process. Everything takes systems and things take commitment. And so this time when I wrote my goal and I started thinking about it, I actually changed my mindset first. I changed my beliefs. I changed how I saw the possibility of reaching my goal. And I looked back at all the amazing things that I've accomplished, and it always came down to believing that it was possible for me. And looking back at goals that I never reached, that I wish I had, and that sometimes, yes, I still look back and have some regret about it. And I realized that there was something that caused me to not believe in myself enough for me to really go hard after that goal. So this is what I wanted to share, because I want you to stop and think about your beliefs and what are they doing for you, and figure out if the beliefs that you have embraced and that have led to the ideas that you hold dear to yourself, are they serving you? Are they helping you with your goals? And that maybe the next time you look at information, you also really take a good, careful look. And remember that research is in the eyes of the beholder. In other words, many times research can be accepted and looked at in a way that fits the researcher's ideas. In other words, that we might be looking to prove something, and we look at the research and we look at that research with this mentality of, yes, here's the evidence that I was looking for. So not a subject that I'm going to get into it's very, very deep. I just want you to understand that in everything that we do, we still see things the ways we want to see them. But what does it go back to? It goes back to your belief system. And so for you to believe more in yourself and in your capacity to reach your goals, you have got to go back and look at your belief systems. So thank you for listening. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate your time. And please tune in and listen to my podcast. And we're moving to doing the podcast every 2 weeks, because the truth is that there are a lot of things that we have to do as entrepreneurs. And I haven't been as efficient as I'd like to be at having my podcast on a regular basis. I was doing well for a while, and now I haven't done a podcast in quite some time. And so knowing that today is International Podcast Day, I wanted to make sure that I got back on track. But at the advice of my marketing team, which I totally appreciate, they said, look, just do one every 2 weeks, especially because I have 2 podcasts. I have this one, and I have my Spanish speaking podcast, which is called Latino Despierta tu Poder. And so having 2 complicates things even more. So do come back. And I hope that something I said today triggers a change, or that at least it helps you to stop and think about your own belief systems and recognize that some of them may need to change. Thanks again. And until 2 weeks.